Hey there, and welcome to this third scene in retro motion design. My name is Cameron, and I'm glad to have you here with me today as we work on building out retro design and animation in motion design. I've got a composition set up here, 1920 by 1080, 30 frames per second, 5 seconds long. Click OK, and I've got a background layer here already set up to go. What we're going to do today on this scene is we are going to build something similar to this. And this was talked about in the very first lesson where we kind of looked at different examples of what creates retro design and animation. And I really like how it's white to yellow to pink to blue, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with some white type, just like we see here. So we're going to jump back into After Effects, and we are going to use our type tool here. We're going to type out 1984. We're going to stick with this typeface. This is Sci-Fi Bronze, which we used in a previous scene. I've got italicized turned on. One thing I see here is I don't want my anchor point to be on the bottom left. I want it to be centered. And I also want my paragraph here to be centered. So I'm going to click center the paragraph, just like that. I'm going to make sure that my alignment is centered, and we are good to go here. And I'll show you why I'm going to do this here in just a minute. But we're going to start here. We're going to hit P for position. Let's go to about a second, 20 frames. P for position, click, come back, and let's just bring this guy down off screen. We're going to right click on the second keyframe, keyframe assistant, easy ease in. So now it's just going to be a nice stop. It comes in and kind of slows down and stops, just like we did in a previous lesson. Looks great. We're going to duplicate this layer, bring it down to the bottom here. We're going to open up our text, and we're going to open up the text for the top layer. And for the second layer, we're going to Alt or Option click on the source text. We're going to pick whip up here to the top source text, and I click outside. And I'll show you here in just a minute why we're going to do that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to offset by 1 keyframe, and it doesn't look like there's much going on yet, but if I add an effect, generate fill, and I change this to like a kind of a nice yellow color, you're going to see here's the offset, right? So you can already see that offset happening. So now the reason I added up I started with a expression here is because now anytime if I change this top text to something like today, it's going to automatically update the text below it. So this keeps it very open-ended, so how I can easily change out the text and not be stuck to have to go through every layer and change all the text. So next, let's duplicate again, bring it to the bottom, offset by 1 frame. Next color we're going to look at is we're going to go a little bit, we're going to maybe do 3 of each. So 3 yellows, yellow to orange, red to pink, something like that. We're not going to follow this exactly. The first one here is way too bright. Maybe something like that. And I'm just going to copy that fill and paste it on the second fill here. Open it up, and I'm going to drop down the brightness to maybe 80%, maybe 60%. And you can see here how it's getting darker. Duplicate it, bring it down. Maybe bring this down to 30. It might be too much. Yeah, I'm not loving that. So let's go back up here. 60%. Maybe something in here. Offset it by 1 keyframe. And already I can tell you it's starting to look pretty ugly. It's the color palette's not working. So we need to find a color palette that does work. And to do that, I'm going to jump into Adobe Color, Adobe Colors. We're going to jump up here, create a new tab, and we're going to type in Adobe Color. And here we go, color.adobe.com. And close this out. And something like this. You know, I mean, like there's no right way to do this in terms of the colors that you want to use. I'm just gonna pick something very quickly here. So let's start. Kind of playing around here. I kind of like that actually. So let's start with the yellow here, and we're gonna Command C to copy that. Jump back in here and go back to our yellow. Paste, perfect. Back to Safari. Green. Back into After Effects. Next one, boom. Back into color. Got blue here. That's the next one. Blue. It's already looking a little bit better. We're going to duplicate this now, bring it down to the bottom. Offset by 1. Back in here, we got purple next. Command copy. We're going to paste this one in here. Purple. Jump back in here. Last one, orange. Boom. So now we've got like our main colors here. And what we can do is we can add some colors in between them. So like our first one here, if we duplicate it, bring it down, I can bring it down in brightness, maybe to something like 70. Let's see if that works. Offset it by a frame. So I'm going to select all these, drag them down. Duplicate it again, bring it down here. Maybe bring it down to 50. See how that looks? Yeah, it's okay. Duplicate the green, bring it down. Again, bring this guy down, maybe in here. Duplicate, bring it down. Maybe a darker green like that. Now we got blue, bring it down. Somewhere in there. Duplicate again, bring down. Just bring down the brightness. There's a lot of different ways you can approach this. Now we're down to the orange. I'm going to duplicate. Bring down the brightness. Duplicate again. Bring down again. Now I need to offset these. You can see that we're not seeing all of them. So let's bring this over. Just want to make sure I'm one frame. So now we've got some really interesting colors below this, right? Again, not my favorite color. That's okay. Let's actually change this to 1984. I liked that a little bit better. Actually, let's change it to 1984 Love. Boom. What we could do here is we could add a new adjustment layer. Effect, color correction, hue and saturation. And we can actually play around with the master hue here and get some different colors. Like those are, I like that. That looks pretty cool. I like that a little bit better. It's just a quick fix. Not the right way you should, always approach it. But one thing I want a little bit more space, I think, between these letters. One way I could try to do that is just making it so right now we're looking at every frame. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We could try and shift select all and make them 2 frames difference. Command click to unselect that one. Another frame, command click. Another frame, command click. Command click. Command click. A lot of clicks here. And when I command click, I'm just saying, hey, don't select that one anymore. It's already moved. Now, this looks interesting, but now there's too much space. You can see like these jagged edges. I don't like that. So I'm going to undo. Command Z, undo, bring them all back right there. So I will stick with this. I'm good with this for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and pre-compose all of these. Pre-compose, and we'll just call this type. Boom, there we go. And thinking about this, actually, there is a way I could actually spread these out a little bit more. And that is, I should have done this at the very beginning, but if I take all of these keyframes here for our resting point, if I select all of them and I hit the graph editor, and I'm in the speed graph here, and all I have to do is select one of these yellow points, and I'm going to hold down shift, and I'm going to drag these out to maybe something like 80%. So here they're closer, but when they start out, they're much further apart, like we can see here. And I actually kind of dig that a little bit better. So you can see how that kind of looks. It's really, really retro-y, right? Because just affecting the graph editor is all we're doing here. So I like that. So we'll come back here. Let's also add a new solid here, and we're going to call this grid. We're going to add another type of grid here. Effect, generate, and let's go down to grid. Take the grid to the background here, and immediately it's too big. Let's go to width slider, and let's just increase something. I don't know, maybe something. Trying to find the right size here. Maybe 65. And then let's make the border like very thin. That may be too thin. Maybe it's 0.5, something like that. And again, I'm looking at the grid here. And honestly, you know, in a real world situation, a grid is probably going to line up with maybe the bottom and the top of these characters. So let's actually increase it. So we go 70%. That's pretty close. Maybe it's 72. I'm actually good with that. 72 is like right where it's at. So that looks pretty good. I like that. A way we could make this grid a little bit more interesting is we could, let me save this. We could add like some dots to this grid. So let's go to, let's see here. What would be the best way to do this? If we did an ellipse tool and we double clicked, it's going to create an ellipse. Let's turn off the stroke. Okay. And let's make a fill. And let's fill it with white. Maybe not 100% white, but something like that. Open up our contents of our ellipse here, and let's change the size to something really small, like 5 by 5. And we're going to take this below the type. We're going to go ahead and turn the type off for now and zoom in here. And so you can see there's a little dot there. Going to constrain the proportions. Maybe let's make it 10, something like that. Now I wanted the dot to kind of fill in all of these points here. So to do that, I needed to add a repeater. So let's add a repeater, and we need to get kind of exact with our math here. So we've got 3 copies. Maybe I go ahead and just drag this guy up in here. I'm going to zoom in here again and zoom way up here, because I want to make sure that he's lined up with really close to the center point of where this grid is going to intersect. I'm going to hit T for transparency and take down the transparency so I can really see here. I'm going to use my arrow keys and go down and to the right. That looks really close to me. So now I need to make sure that these layers here are lining up here and here. So I'm going to open up my contents here, open up my repeater, transform repeater, and let's see here. Looks like 72 is where it's at. And if you remember the grid, we set it to a width of 72. So there you go. So now all I have to do is just increase the number of these guys across here. So we're at 3. So let's just increase this to 27. So now they're filling in all of them. Now we're going to add a second repeater. Let's go to repeater again. And we're going to open this one up. And to this one, we're going to zero out the X position, but the Y position, we're going to bring it down, right? Just like, it looks like we're going to do 72 again. 72, and then we just have to increase the number. So something like that. Perfect. So now I've got these dots, right? So we'll call this grid dots. Now, I don't want to see all of these dots. I just want to see some of these dots. And looking at them here, they're a little bit too big. So we're going to go back into our ellipse path. And let's go in the middle. Let's go 7.5. Let's try that. So now we're going to create another new layer above this. And we're going to call this dot matte. And to this matte, we're going to go to noise and grain, fractal noise. We're going to change it from basic. Actually, we'll keep it at basic. We're going to change it from soft linear to block. We're going to take our complexity all the way down to 1. So we just have these basic blocks here. We can increase the contrast. We can reduce the brightness, something like that. We also need to decrease the size. We'll go to transform and we're going to decrease the size, something like this. If I hit T for transparency and bring down my transparency, I want them to, they don't have to match the grid exactly. But if they're smaller like this grid, that's going to help. So that will probably work. We'll take the transparency back up to 100. And now under evolution, we're going to hit Alter Option and we're going to type in time times a high number. So maybe 1,000. And let's preview this and see how fast they're moving. So actually that's probably too fast. And I'll tell you why. So what I'm trying to do here is I want to tell my grid dots to look at the luminance. So we're going to luma matte the fractal noise above it. And you can see here what's happening. You can see these dots are coming in based on that fractal noise. Now, again, it looks like maybe the dots now are too small because it's such a fast movement. So let's go back to 10. So we're a little bit larger now. And you can see there's a lot of movement going on here. Maybe it's too fast. It could work. Maybe it's too fast right now. So let's take time times, let's take a 0 off and make it 100. And let's see how this looks. Maybe we'll go in the middle. So let's try it 500. The fast dots were actually kind of interesting, but I think they're too fast. So these, okay, so this still feels a little bit fast. It could also be the size of the fractal noise. So maybe we increase the size to something like 50. And I think that could work. You know, depending on what we do here with the retro kind of effects, we may not even see this at all. So we don't want to spend too much time on it yet. So there we go, looking pretty good. Of course, I always love to add, let me go ahead and say this. I always love to add glow. So we could try the stylized glow that's built into After Effects. So effect stylized glow. And we could take a look at how this looks. It's usually pretty intense. I typically stay away from glow built into After Effects because it is so intense. One way you could approach it is you could drop the intensity down to like 0.1 and make the radius, you know, a fairly small number. So that's with and without. Then what you could do is duplicate it and you could turn the radius up, threshold, maybe the intensity up a little bit. You could duplicate it again and kind of give it a, a bigger glow like that. A lot of times if I'm using the built-in After Effects glow, I'm going to use it 3 times to get kind of like a close glow, a medium, and then a wide glow. So that's how we would use glow there. But I'm going to go ahead and turn that off and use plug in everything again, deep glow. And that's way too intense. So I'm going to bring it way down. I always love chromatic aberration. So we're going to go ahead and turn that on just to have it there. Bring in Something like that, maybe. Let's take a look at this. And that's looking pretty good. Not totally sold on the colors again. And part of that has to do with the glow here. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and turn the glow off for now. Maybe we're gonna jump back in here into the type, get out of the graph editor. And it'd be kind of fun as soon as this all resolves, like maybe right here, what we could do is have like this top text could have like a sheen of glow go across it. So how we would create that is, let's see, we can type in light sweep. So it's under generate CC light sweep. I'm gonna bring that down in here, maybe somewhere in here. And let's turn up the width, maybe the intensity. Let's start it out here, and we'll set a center point here, and we'll just kind of have it fly through here. And kind of hard to see it right now, but if we preview it, if I bring the preview point up here to the front, and I'm not seeing any intensity yet. Maybe we should try and add a stylized glow. Sometimes you have to add some effects on top of other effects to get certain ones to like really show up. So let's try this. See if we can see anything coming through here. Now I can see it starting to come through. So let's increase the radius of this glow. Now you can really start to see it come through. So maybe it's 60. I'm going to turn down the intensity of the original glow and turn down the intensity of the sweep as well. So right here, you can really see it. I don't love the angle, so let's rotate the angle so it's kind of angled with these guys here. And I'm looking at this line, looking at the italicized letters here, and that looks pretty close. Maybe turn down the width. So you can see right here, there's the line. Now that looks a little weird because it's going outside the letters. So we'll fix that. Right now, I'm just trying to get this kind of like sweep across here. So let's increase the width. Maybe take down the edge intensity. And then I think we need to take down the glow radius as well. Just a little bit, so maybe like 40. You can see now the sweep's a little bit closer to the letters. And again, we're going to be playing effects over this. So right now it feels like it's a little strong, and we can always decrease that. So I'm going to hit U on my keyboard. I'm going to hit on this last keyframe. We're going to hold this, toggle this keyframe so we can hold it. And then come a little bit further down and just copy and paste these keys and make sure this is all the way extended out. This is extended out. So it'll just sweep across it again. So there we go. We can see it right there. It looks really nice. And it comes across again right there. Perfect. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Next we're going to do is we're going to add an effect. And we'll call this glows in case we decide to come back to it. We're going to add another new adjustment layer here. And we're going to call this one signal. Signal is an effect you can find at aescripts.com. It's under Zybex. Very affordable and very powerful. So you can see immediately what happens when I add the effect here. It immediately starts bringing this into that whole retro world. So let's go ahead and preview this, and then we'll play with some of the settings here. So there's our preview, and it's looking awesome. I absolutely love it. I'm okay with the colors now. The colors are actually working a little bit better. You could always come in and you know, really fine tune these colors, add more to them, really get it in the world that you want it to live in. But for this example, I think it works great. One thing that's bothering me though is the black background. We need to add something to that black background. But before we do that, I just want to show you with this plugin. Very affordable, very easy to use, and right out of the box, it looks great. There's a lot of things you can play around with here with the signal strength. You can decrease it. It's going to look a little bit more warped like that. And I actually kind of like that. So let's go from 40 down to maybe 20. It kind of brings some color into this area up in here. Signal amplification. Again, you can really destroy your image with this. Cutoff filter. Same thing. You can really just start cranking these guys up and getting some interesting looks. Maybe we'll try 188 for this. That's kind of nice. Lumen noise off and on. Hue noise. That's really high up there, which this helps bring a lot of noise into the hues here. So this is with and this is without. And I actually kind of like that. So let's bring that up a little bit. Maybe 45, maybe let's try 100. That's kind of nice. Maybe that's too much though. So let's drop it back down to like 80. I like that. Chroma loss, you can increase that and it starts getting rid of a lot of the color here. We can go all the way down to black and white. Sharpen does exactly what it says. It just sharpens the image and you can really destroy that as well. Device to connections. The more you put in here, the more distorted your image is going to be. So maybe we'll stick with a 1. These 3 settings here just kind of change the overall look. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing, but you can get some different looks there. Destruction button, Luma, turn on and off. So this gets rid of like a lot of the noise at the bottom there. You can also decrease one of these. I forget which one it is. Tape errors. There we go. We can hit tape errors and that is gone. All right. So there it is. There it's gone. We can also adjust these parameters here to kind of bring it down. So I want it more minimized, which that's going to work a little bit better. Maybe 0.98. Yeah. Just really minimal down there. TV distortion, thick distortion. I don't want any distortion on this, but you can see what I can do there. I'm going to save. Now, like I said, I want to bring some color into the background here. So to do that, an easy way to do that is just to create a new solid. And we'll call this gradient. And we're going to bring this down maybe below the grid. Effect, generate, and we're going to go over here to gradient ramp. And I want to use some of the colors that I pulled from the type here. So maybe like these purples. Let's start with the purple here. So let's find a purple. And I can't seem to find a purple. Oh, that's because I adjusted the hue. I got to remember that. Just kind of playing around with some colors here just to see. No, I liked where it was at. But we'll come back in here and we'll just, we'll solo the type and make sure our gradient selected. And we'll select for the black, we'll select maybe like this lighter purple. And for the white, let's go with maybe this lighter blue. And we will turn those on and you can see here how that looks. So immediately it's already like that better. I might try and swap the colors and see how that looks. Maybe swap them again. Maybe I will just go into my pinks, drop the brightness down. Maybe in the 60% range. Same with the blue. Maybe in the 50% range. I like that a little bit better. It's not quite so bright and in your face. And I can still see the grid, which is great. Let's also add another new adjustment layer here. And we'll call this effects. We're going to drop it below signal. And we're going to add some grain, some heavy grain here. So let's go into noise and grain, add grain. We could do grain or we could do noise. It just kind of depends what I'm feeling like for the day. Grain, this one's going to add more time to your renders versus the noise, but I'm just going to increase the intensity to 2. So there's a lot of noise in there. Maybe that's actually too much. Let's go 1.5, something like that. So that's with the grain and that is without. So you can see it kind of helps break it up. Now we start to lose some of this grid back here, but this is going to be something that's just, it's very subtle in the background. I never wanted it to be something that really stood out. And in motion, we're probably going to see those pieces moving, those dots moving. Let's also go to Effect, Stylize, and let's go to CC Vignette. And a lot of times you don't think about using a vignette for an effect like this, but you can see how it kind of just darkens up the edges like that. So there's our render. It's looking awesome. I know I can make it even better though. And I'm going to start with changing the typeface here and then changing the colors here. I'm just not sold on those colors. So we're going to jump back into the type here. We're going to select all of our type and we're going to come over here and type in Arial Bold. There we go. I already like that better. Make them a little bit more bold by doing faux bold on top of that. Looks good. Now let's go into our color here and I'm just going to start changing these colors up. So we're going to start here with red and copy that, paste it here and drop it to 60%. Paste it here, drop it to 30%. Make it 100% here, come down to the purple area right in here, copy. Paste 60. And this is where I should have started. I think I overcomplicated it. I know I did at the beginning. Copy. 60%. Paste. 30%. Come in the light blue here. Copy. 60%. Oop. Make sure this is set. Paste. 30%. Then we're going to duplicate this one, bring it down, offset 1 frame, duplicate again, 1 frame, duplicate again, 1 frame. And then this bottom one here is going to be up in this kind of lime green color. Copy. Paste. 60%. Paste. 30%, and I should be able to turn off my hue and saturation and have some nice looking colors there. Come back over here. And for the gradient, I'm going to solo the type, solo the gradient, and I'm going to pick something. Actually, don't want to do that. Make sure I can see all these colors here. And maybe pick something in the middle, purple, and then maybe middle blue, something like that. And I like that better. Let's try swap. Back in our type, and we're just going to select all the type again and just kind of give it some spacing on the tracking. So maybe 50, maybe 100. That's actually too much. Let's go back to 50. And let's preview this. Really, really close here. So a final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to come back to my glows and try turning one of them on here. Yeah. gives a little bit more life. Remember how we saw a lot of glows in the examples that we checked out. So glows above vignette, below. I think below is going to work just fine. And then maybe for type, I'm actually going to give the type its own extra glow, just a little bit, maybe. It already has a little glow inside the pre-comp. So let's turn this way down, like maybe 0.1. That's still too much. So that's with and without. Maybe decrease the radius. Maybe 0.03. Yeah, I'm good with that. And we're going to go ahead and render this out and call it good. And there we go. There is our 1984 Love typography retro animation. You could always dial back the signal effect here to be a little less in your face, but I love the grid in the background, the moving, the dots moving, the type kind of flying in, doing its thing. That, my friends, is scene number 3 for retro design and animation.